What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're not in the garden, so I guess just welcome back to the channel. So before we forget, I want to make sure that we put this out first and foremost. We are starting a second channel, all right? Because what we're gonna do is we don't want to confuse the YouTube algorithm, and we want to kind of be faithful to our. We want to be faithful to our faithful subscribers. And I know everybody, like, just because you're in the gardening doesn't mean you're necessarily into homesteading, the like watching us build on the land and all that stuff.
But I think everybody is in the homesteading right now. That's in the gardening. Look at the way the world is going.
Basically. So we don't want to confuse the YouTube algorithm, and we want to be loyal to our faithful subscribers and viewers. So we're going to start a second channel where we're going to be putting most of our, basically all of our the projects that we're doing on the land and stuff like that. That's going to go on that channel, and we're going to try to keep this as closely related to gardening as possible. But we're still going to have some of that stuff going on over here too. So I just want to put that out first, and the name of that channel is going to be
Evans Plus 7.
Oh, I thought it was Evans Unplugged.
Well, we already have one called Evans Plus 7. We can do Evans Unplugged.
Either one. So
Evans Unplugged. I like that.
Huh?
Let's do Evans Unplugged. We'll start a brand new channel.
And it's going to be called
Evans Unplugged.
Evans Unplugged. All right. So we look forward to seeing you guys over there. So what we wanted to talk to you guys about was, so on Wednesday of this current week, we just did an experiment. We did a grid, off grid. We went off grid for 24 hours. Okay. Now, before y'all start thinking like, oh, they went camping or they did something extreme, no, it wasn't extreme at all. All right, what did we do, Keisha?
We stayed at home.
Mm-hmm.
We just cut off all the power, and we tried to do everything that we could to simulate an off-grid situation.
Exactly. That's it. So we were going to actually trip the breaker and cut everything off, so nobody could kind of
everything in the refrigerator is going to melt if we do that.
Yes, but we was like, let's chill. Maybe we're doing Dos Muchos right now. And we were gonna surprise the kids and like not tell them and just spring it on them like, power's off. What you gonna do? But we do understand that, like, some of them they run their own online businesses.
Yeah.
So we wanted to be respectful of that. We know that in a real world situation, there ain't nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it, and that's why we wanted to just be like, bam.
Exactly.
Or it down.
Or there is something they can do about it, and they need to start thinking about it now, because that was the whole point of us doing the whole 24-hour off grid. It's like, what if you're in the middle of running your business and you have things to ship, but we lose power? Now there's no labels, there's no you can't do anything, right? So so that's the whole point behind it. But for us, the main point was to find the chinks in the armor, right? So we've been prepping up to this point. We've been buying food, putting stuff back. Keisha's been canning. We've been buying lighters and lighters and candles and flashlights and extra this and extra that.
Yeah, you name it.
Yeah.
Making Crisco candles, 72 day candles. We've been prepping quite a bit. We're going to start ramping it up and show you guys what we're doing on our new channel, because it is a vital time. We're past the time to be doing this, but if you haven't started already,
it's not too late.
It's not too late. As long as, the lights are still on.
As long as the world's still rolling the way that it normally does,
right,
you have a chance to prepare.
But we just believe that we're going to be moving towards a self-sufficiency lifestyle, and that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to shock ourselves to death by not, paying attention to what's going on right now. We want to put ourselves in the predicaments now, so because we have a big family, we have 7 kids, so we want to know that we're ready. We don't want to just, obviously we're all survivors, so if it hit, we're gonna survive somehow. But we want to be prepared. Learning things like learning how to fish, learning how to hunt. Those things are gonna come, in handy. They are.
It's always better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And that's just what we are. The main point of us doing this whole 24 hours off grid was to just test our readiness.
Yep.
That's it. Because what happens is you can prep, you can have all these things, and then something happens, and then that's when you're
Yeah,
thrown into the
yeah.
fray.
You don't know until it happens where your weak
Hmm.
areas are.
Exactly. So we wanted to identify those early, identify them now while the lights are still on, so that we can make any corrections and make any adjustments from there. So what we wanted to do is just share with you guys like how that whole thing went and what we learned about us in our preps
And
in
not
that process.
and not only that, but the kids need to realize and understand as well as us, we take for granted the, power and things like that,
Mhm.
that it's just
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
And sometimes you don't realize that, these things are not promised. So and it was crazy because are we gonna start telling them what exactly happened now? Are we gonna start sharing with
Yeah.
them
Well,
what, okay.
I was gonna set it up so they'll know how we do it. I
Okay,
mean, I
all
think
right.
you already kind of did, but just for a basic setup so you guys can follow, is that we decided to do this on a Wednesday, which is family night. So because it was a chance for us to all come together for family night anyway. And the rules were everything is off. Like you can't do anything, like no laundry, no nothing like that. So there were some exceptions because we do run our own home services business. So that phone was still active in the event that we get a call. We gotta go make the money, right? So that phone was still active, but every other phone was off. Like we couldn't even like it was like turn it off, leave it in your room. So no computers, no tablets, no nothing. Um, we did leave we didn't unplug the refrigerator, you know,
No. Mm.
and we left the lights on for the chickens for safety reasons,
The
right?
baby
For the
chicks.
baby chicks.
Hmm.
But outside of that, no AC, no fans, no
No
computers,
wi yeah,
no
no
Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi,
no nothing, right?
no
And
stove.
yeah, no stove, so we had to cook. We have to it's like, what are you gonna do, right? And I wanted to take it a step further, and I wanted to actually have us using the bucket for the bathroom because you don't know how long the power is gonna be down. You don't know how long your water situation is gonna be kind of funky. So no pun intended. But um, I was like, let's use the buckets so that we can find out flaws or a better way of doing things. But I was outvoted. I was
He's
vetoed.
outvoted this time. And yeah, because not that we don't want to, but we have been in that situation before. We all stayed in an RV once. Family of 9, we stayed in RV, and so we've been in some predicaments
Yeah,
already. So it's not like we didn't know how to do that. So we know how to do that.
for 2.5 years, we lived in the RV for two and a
We
half
lived
years
in an RV.
by choice.
Family of 9, living in an RV by choice. So we're not exactly
We're not strangers to that lifestyle.
yeah, we're not strangers to that lifestyle. So
All right,
y'all, okay.
so cool. So now we can get into what we learned, I guess.
Okay, well, one thing was interesting. Our oldest son, he kept cutting the lights on. He just kept forgetting that, we're supposed to be in this, and that's it. We're in, and that is exactly what we wanted to kind of show, is that we're so dependent upon these
The modern
yeah, the
conveniences.
modern conveniences, that if we don't have them, then what do we do? Because we're supposed to be finding other ways, of doing things. So yeah, I found it interesting that CJ kept cutting the lights on over and over. He's like, "Oh, I forgot. Oh, I forgot."
And we all just yelled at him like, "The lights!" Then we made the light patrol. We made Markel the
Yeah, we
light
made
patrol,
Markel the
so
light patrol.
he had to get on him. Anybody that cut on the light, he had to get on him. Um, for me, what I thought was going to be the most difficult thing, not for me, but for other people, for mainly the kids, was going
Loneliness,
boredom,
boredom.
dealing with boredom in that situation, like no tablets, no TV, especially when night comes and you can't. It's going to be difficult to read, to draw. Like you can do it, you can get a flashlight, you can get a candle, but you can't. Even though we were only doing it for 24 hours, it's not something you don't want to be frivolous and reckless with your flashlights and candles because
Yeah,
unless you have a way to buy more candles or charge your batteries for your flashlight, that light source is going to be lost if you try to run it for too long. So the original plan was, we had talked about this months before, like weeks before, was that in the event of a grid down situation, and we're not talking about we're talking about a grid down for any reason.
Yeah, for any
natural
reason. For
disaster,
any reason.
whatever, right?
End of the world, all that.
Anything.
Or just an accident.
Yeah, earthquake, tornadoes, whatever. The grid is down,
Fires.
right?
Mhm.
We
The return of Jesus.
what we were saying was we're up in the daytime, so when the sun comes up, we up, and then when the sun goes down, we're down.
World War III.
When the sun goes down, we're down, right? So that's what we have been talking about leading up to this thing, like weeks and months prior. But I thought the kids were gonna have a problem with that, and they did fine. They did just fine. It was only 24 hours, and maybe in their mind they just thought that, hey, it's gonna be ending at such time, so they just managed through it. So, but nonetheless, they still did better than I expected them to do for that time. So what was something else that you learned?
What else did I learn? I learned how to use the pit boss. I've never used a smoker. I'm not a griller. I don't use the grill. I've never learned how to use the charcoal grill or anything like that. But I learned how to use the pit boss. It's funny how much time you have when you're not on your phones or computer or anything like that. You just have all this time on your hands, and it was a good time to learn something. So I learned how to use the smoker. Well, kinda.
Yeah.
It kept cutting off on me, but that was good practice.
Yeah. I learned that we are better prepared than I thought we were. Even though it was 24 hours, it was only 24 hours. Excuse me. I felt like going into it, we were just in a better position um, because we already had some things. We already had some food, and then we talked to the older kids about, like, they was like, well, what if the power really does go out, and then the food in the refrigerator, in the freezer, and that's when we were just like, that's the stuff that has to go first because it's gonna go bad. So that's when you start pulling that stuff out and you start cooking it, and try to get some ice and put the stuff on ice. You just make some adjustments, right? But that's the stuff that has to go first. But for a 24-hour period, we have exactly what we need to survive through a 24-hour period. We did take some notes and write down some things that, like, we talked about
Bikes, transportation.
And, like, we need bikes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have bikes, and create with all these kids, and we don't have bikes. Well, we have bikes, but none of the big people have bikes. The kids got bikes, but I'm not about to be
If
like
you
Pee Wee
have to
Herman.
ride one of their bikes, you have to ride one of their bikes.
Yeah, it's whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we found
we don't want to.
but things like transportation, like having a surplus of wipes, like baby wipes.
Oh yeah, that was one of the things that we came to the conclusion of, is going to the bathroom. You gotta wipe, and we were like, what are we gonna use?
So because we had the idea with the bucket for the toilet, and then the wood chips and you pee outside and you poop in the bucket, but it's like, okay, so how do we cleanse ourselves? And it's like, you could use toilet paper, but at some point toilet paper is going to be out. You're going to run
bye-bye.
Depending on how
depending on what situation we're in
and how long you're in that situation.
I'm thinking probably TMI, but leaves.
No, this is not poison
look at all
ivy.
these leaves. Look at all these leaves on these trees.
Then you got two problems.
But I think we came up with water. We were like, you could use water.
Yeah, and then and that's when the baby wipes came in.
Baby wipes.
We talked about the water. We talked about it, like, basically what do they call it, bidet or something like that.
We've been through this. It's nothing to be honestly to shy away from, because we've already visited this, and everybody, the main thing that people were looking for is TP during CV.
Yeah. So the idea now is just like, when we go buy, we normally buy enough TP for the month in one shot, right? So now we have to buy a little bit more in the event that something
we're
goes
in
down.
An extended time, right, where we can't get these things. And then, y'all, I mean, there's so many reasons that to have this conversation. We were just like tariffs were going up like 135 something percent just last month. I think it changed as of now, but we don't need to get comfortable. We don't need to get comfortable because these things happen, and they come upon you like a snare. And I always teach the kids the scripture in the Bible, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and poverty will be over you like an armed robber. So it's important. It's very important to. We have kids, so we definitely suggest that you start preparing the children's mindset for what could possibly be coming, because you don't want to be arguing and complaining and fighting about what you don't have, and things like that with your family. You want to be happy because you did what you needed to do to prepare yourself and your children. So it's just like almost like another day.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so we try to get them to wrap their minds around the ideas that like if in that kind of situation, like it's going to be less play and more work because we have things to accomplish, right? Because one thing that we didn't cover during this 24-hour period was security because we didn't because technically we didn't
We're
we're
not
not in a situation.
finished. We're
Yeah,
not finished either. Like
yeah,
we're gonna practice this like at least once or twice a week.
yeah.
Hmm.
A week. Okay. So we didn't go over security and like rotate like in a real situation like that. Like I'm like some of us everybody can't sleep at the same time, right? So we're gonna have to sleep in shifts. So we didn't cover that, but we did cover that. Another thing is a lot of people go out and buy beans and rice for
Did you
sleep.
say Bings with a G?
Beans,
Oh, I thought you said Bings.
beans. I probably did. We'll know that. We'll see it in the replay. We'll hear it in the replay. But a lot of people go out and buy beans and rice,
Hmm.
and it's like beans and rice cook differently than other things, so it takes time for you to cook beans and rice.
And he should know. He's an instructor, so
Yeah,
survival instructor. So he brought up a point, and I was like, you know what? Because we bought so much rice, and I'm like, he was like, you have to have a
source of
steady
heat
source of heat to keep it, And he was like, how are you going to cook rice off grid
on the open flame,
on an
right?
open flame?
On the grill, and it's like we got all this rice and us. We got all this rice, all these beans, and it's like, have we ever experienced or experimented with cooking rice
Bings too.
beans over an open flame? So, um, it's stuff like there it is. I think it got a twin,
Bless
but
you.
um, but it's like you have these things. It's like you have to think about like how am I going to cook it, right? So it's like let me go out here and see if I can cook rice over an open flame. How am I going to do the beans? Because you can do a what's it called, a quick soak or something with beans. Like you
Yeah.
can soak them and then
Yeah.
cook. And it's like then how long do they have to cook? Do you have enough firewood or charcoal or whatever you're using to cook? Do you have enough of that to be able to cook that stuff? How are you going to reduce the flame, especially when you're cooking rice, to go from a boil to a simmer? Okay, especially if you're cooking in a tiny grill. So these are the things. That's why we did what we're doing. That's why we did what we did, so that we could kind of put that stuff at the front of our brains to say, okay, like it's cool to have the beans and rice, but what else can we cook where we don't have to wait hours to eat? Because people ain't gonna like unless you're waking up in the morning and you're starting your dinner at the same time that you're starting your breakfast or whatever. We
One
don't
thing
necessarily
you
want
can
that.
do is go ahead and cook your beans now and can them.
Yeah, the canning is always an option.
While you have the electricity, the light, go ahead and cook up your beans. I'm not sure. I've never canned rice before. Um,
But Homestead Heart has
rice.
the rice that she likes to can, and she
Oh, she
says it
cans
cans it really.
rice.
Yeah, it's like a king's
Oh,
rice, emperor's rice,
oh,
something like that.
yeah, the
Something they
black
call it.
rice. Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. But yeah, so we learned that, like I said, we are much better prepared than what we thought we were. And we're gonna do it again, and next time maybe 24 hours, and then maybe
Wait, it was 24
for
hours.
48 hours. Maybe next time it'd be 48, and then 72, and then 96, whatever, right?
And he's done this before. Like he stayed in the mountains and everything, so he tried to push us real hard.
Oh man.
But I'm like,
Uh,
right,
oh, you could.
right. Let's ease into it a little bit. Yeah, he was up there with the mountain lions and all of that,
She said
cows and
She said
stuff.
that was hard. I'm like, I don't push them hard.
Well, compared to what the norm is and what he's used to dealing with, that can be a bit
because I'm like,
part.
to be honest, it's all it is inoculation. It's just an introduction to something so that it's not a surprise the next time you see it, right?
Right.
Because if the grid actually shut down, like for real, right now, there is no
You're right.
inoculation. You're
You're
in it,
right. Yeah,
you
you're
know,
right.
and
You're in
so
it.
it's like, what are you gonna do? So I
Right.
do give it to them and try to give it to them in small doses.
Yeah, I mean, we can
Like
do
we weren't out
that.
there trying to catch and kill rabbits, you know, nothing like that. But you know, it's so. And another thing was, another rule was, you can use whatever we have, but we weren't going to go buy anything. So, for example, we weren't going to go buy food that was especially for the grill, just because we was going to be grilling.
Right.
Like we had to cook what we already had. So if we had whatever, like I said, whatever we had, we could use it. But it worked out. It worked out really well, and I think everybody enjoyed it. I think everybody had fun. The kids handled it well. Um, and
The smoke was a bit irritating. I wouldn't want to have to like use smoke every day.
from
Hope,
the smoker,
yeah, from the
yeah,
smoker.
when we use the actual grill, like the Weber grill, it was fine. And I had to show, like, it gave me a chance to show, especially the little kids. They were they was amazed at how to start fire, because they were like, "Oh, we got a little bit of lighter fluid," and I was like, "Oh, we don't need it." And they was like, "Well, what are we gonna use?" And I showed them what to use, and I showed them how to do it, and how like how I got everything lit, and they were actually like, that's pretty cool, right? And it got to the point where even Keyshawn, the third oldest, he's like, I want to start the fire next time. I want to be able to use I want to practice my flint and steel. Like,
Okay,
right on,
yeah.
right? Absolutely, do it. So, um, yeah, the smoker was it did its job. It did exactly what it says it's supposed to do. But the other grill was just fine, and we actually had a good time, and you know, we
Everybody was
enjoyed it.
happy.
Yeah,
Everybody enjoyed themselves. It felt different.
yeah.
It was nice
We sat outside in the front uh,
all night.
all night. You know, with the porch light off, and you
Hmm.
know, everybody talked, and we read a book, and we
Yeah.
just talked. You know, which is not, like I said, this is something we do every week anyway on family night. But it was just this is just kind of a different vibe, and they actually requested that we did it again. It was their idea to do it again. So there you go. So yeah, you got anything else?
Hmm. Anything else? No, it was it. I we actually all stayed up a lot later than we normally would.
Now, one thing we haven't done is we haven't sat with everybody and talked about the experience, and talked about like what did we see in
Yeah,
anything.
that's right. We got to
Um,
talk to them.
but I'm gonna just say to you guys right now, like, if you are prepping and preparing for a hard time, something like that, like a grid down situation for whatever reason, right? That's a good way to, like, at least say, practice your preps, where you don't have to go camping outside, you don't have to go outside and set up a tent and all that good stuff. You just pull the plug on your house, and just maneuver through that day with no electricity, with no power, and you're gonna identify some areas of strength and weakness,
Because
and you just make adjustments.
right, because there's some things that we've purchased that we haven't even tested
Hmm.
out. Like we have solar panels, we have
Solar
a solar
generator,
generator, a
a
gas
have a gas
generator,
generator.
a auger. We have a few things that we haven't tried out because we've been just hearing what's going on, and we've just every now and again we'll collect stuff and make sure that we have what we need. We stay in the high desert, so for me, AC would be
Mm,
a big deal
hmm.
because I'm pretty sure we can find water. We can get water, food, but AC, the heat, like these temperatures get definitely in the three digits, and that was something that was important for me. But something that we did earlier on in the day, this was something that stood out to me. I like the time that we spent under the mesquite tree. Under the mesquite tree was definitely a lot cooler than it was outside of it. You agree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was really cool under the mesquite tree. So being creative on how we stay cool, in this time, because like I say, we stay in the desert, so we're gonna need a place to cool off because it really gets really stressfully hot out here. So
And I know some people will be like, "Well, just stay in the house." Like, when your house holds heat,
yeah,
you know,
Our
it's
household
like
heat.
it was much better outside under the tree than it was because you had that breeze
Mm-hmm.
coming through
Yeah.
than it was in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was, and you know, a shade tree can make a difference of 10, 20 degrees, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so 104 drops down to 94,
Drop a picture of the shade tree.
right
The
now.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like I said, like I encourage anyone that's interested in doing so to go ahead and do something similar. It doesn't take a lot of effort. And it's only 24 hours. And you once you see how easy or how difficult it is for you to sustain for 24 hours, that should give you that should let you know some things that you know you got some work to do, right? If it's difficult, you got some work to do. Even if it's easy, it's like okay, you've done a good job up to this point. Just keep going, right? So yeah, that's what we did last Wednesday. It was cool. I think the kids didn't want to do it at first, but then once we got going, I think they were okay with it. And like I said, I think we learned a lot. And another thing is when you have animals, you know, what are you going to do about for the animals, especially when it comes down to water? So when you're buying water, you have to include your animals. When you're stocking up food, you have to include
Your
your animals.
animals.
So that's another thing that we learned, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we never included them in before. So now we know we have to include them with our preps. Easy as that. All right, so we appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully, you know this gave you guys some insight and some courage, some encouragement to want to do something similar. It's not hard. It's not bad. It's not, you know, it's nothing to be afraid of. Just do
Just
it.
find the chinks in your armor.
Yeah, find the chinks in your armor, and you're gonna feel better about yourself, right? Because you're gonna be like, oh, I did a good job. You know, I made it for 24 hours without electricity, and you know, we cooked and we did it. I did everything as normal as usual, but learning how to take a bird bath, right? Um, so yeah, make sure you guys head over to the other channel, Evans Unplugged, where we're gonna be doing more stuff like this and putting it over there. We're gonna be doing more of the homestead projects and putting them over there. We're gonna drop a little bit here too to kind of, you know, so that you guys can kind of stay up to date. But we appreciate you guys for watching. Hopefully, you guys learned something from this, found some level of value in it, and we will see you guys in the next video. But until then,
if you stay prepared, you
you
don't
ain't
got
got
to
to
get
get
repaired.
if you stay ready.
You
You
ain't
ain't
got
got
to
to
get
get
ready.
right? But here's another video for you guys to watch. Follow us on our homesteading or gardening journey. We'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces.